Welcome to Three, a show about Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, and part of the Tennis Channel podcast network. I'm Gil Gross with Amy Lundy, and in for Joel Drucker, it's Craig O'Shaughnessy, someone we're so excited to have on, a resume that is extremely impressive, and you are likely familiar with his work. Founder of Brain Game Tennis, which provides strategy for players of all levels, current head coach of Alexei Popyrin on the ATP Tour, former strategy coach of one of our three, Novak Djokovic, and the current strategy coach for the Italian Federation. So this is, of course, a big three show, Craig. So let's start with Rafa Nadal, and we so appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule. Yep. You are in Melbourne, court 3 behind you, and the beautiful city skyscape looks incredible. You've had a chance.
There it is back there.
There it is. I know you've been at Rafa's practices and you've had a chance to be around him in the last couple of weeks. Any big observations about Rafa Nadal and the state of his game and anything you've seen from observing?
Yeah, I think he's building nicely, playing the Melbourne 1 event, basically got over COVID, got here, played the tournament. I was fortunate to get a walkover there. He would have had to play Talon Griekspoor, who was on a 28-match win streak, and he came up sore, so he didn't have to play that match. But Rafa won there. Then he gets a week of practice, and he's doing very well in the tournament so far. When I got in this morning, I went and watched the tiebreak. One of the things they're like, oh, it's so long, it's so amazing, and yes, the tennis was amazing, and yes, he was lucky to get through on a few of those points. No question, but Rafa's bouncing the ball like 13 or 15 times between first and second serve. So, it takes so much time. So that the length of that tie break is always going to be a little bit more than other players. What I was surprised about was how often he went to the backhand slice, and I can only imagine that the strategy was to give Mannarino zero power to work with, because Mannarino is a great counter puncher. He strings his racket like spaghetti, basically hand pulls it. It's so loose. So he really does like to feed and redirect. And, the amount of slice backhands, I think, was to give him zero power, so Mannarino would have to swing and hopefully overhit. I think Rafa's doing really well. Just so you know, he's so far in the tournament, the forehand's doing well, 67 forehand winners, 24 off the backhand, typical Rafa numbers, 96 errors off the forehand, 79 off the backhand. Everything's normal. And in the rally length, he's plus 62. He's won 62 more points than he's lost in 0 through 4, 27 more than he's lost in 5 3, and 21 and 9 plus. So I look at that and I'm like, these are all par for the course numbers. I think he's doing well. I think he's building nicely. I think not having Novak in the draw, all of these guys, all of your big three seem to grow another leg when somebody's missing. And now Rafa, for the first time ever, has got 2 guys missing. So he's got to be feeling good about his chances.
Plus, Zverev just went out of the tournament, which was a looming threat. First of all, Craig, thanks for doing this. You're a good friend of mine. And you've mentored me and just been great to me over the years. So thanks for coming on. The question I have about Rafa is about his return position. I noticed in the match against Mannarino and to some extent in the previous matches that he's moving closer to the baseline on second serve. What do you see in that area?
Well, I first picked up on that in a practice. They like to have closed practices here, which I'm not a fan of. Novak, when he got out, had closed practices. Rafa had closed practices, but I got in the day before, they closed it all up, and I took video, and I put a little tweet out there of him stepping in and ripping a second serve return from inside the baseline. And I immediately said that Rafa is a way better player if he will do this. And, on clay, the ball's going to slow down more. Players aren't going to serve and volley against him. He can get away with it. He absolutely should do it, because where he's very vulnerable is in the deuce court when the opponent hits a slider out wide and the ball is slow and the ball dies. When Novak played him here in the final, I said, Novak, You know, you need to hit that serve between 95 and 105 and just bend the daylights out of it. Don't let it get all the way to Rafa. Make Rafa have to really reach for it. And then the other side of the court's immediately wide open. So Rafa is smart to step up against second serves to take that wide slider away, take it right down the middle, and you're already around the baseline where he's going to run up to anyway. So it's a good move. You know, it doesn't make sense to me to be so far back on hard. And you know, I think we talked about it. You know, I was out on court this morning, and you know, you reach down and touch the surface and you rub it. It is a vastly different surface than in New York. New York has a heavier paint and it has sand in the paint. And you know, a few years ago, they used to put round granules of sand. They changed it to triangular granules to make it even rougher. I mean, I remember going out there maybe 2017, 2018 New York, rubbing my hand. I was like sandpaper. I did that for 30 seconds. I'll be bleeding. Not in Australia. You know, it's a slicker surface. The ball tends to skid here, whereas the ball tends to sit in New York. So I don't think there's any benefit for Rafa to be so far back on a second serve. I think the surface dictates he can stay up and block more returns and force more serve +1 errors.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the return position thing. And Craig, I don't know if you only watched the tiebreak of the Mannarino match, but I thought Nadal made an adjustment in time for the tiebreak. But early on in the first set, Mannarino was serving wide on both the deuce and the ad every time. Nadal was getting dragged way off the court. And it was only until later in that set he moved up. And I thought it was a great adjustment for him. But we talk about the second serve and Nadal's ability to be aggressive off of that return. What are your thoughts on the first serve return in terms of position? Does it depend on the player? And then obviously you can bring this back to Rafa, but you see so many players nowadays giving themselves that time and space, from Medvedev to Thiem to Nadal, especially on the first serve return.
Yeah, you know, he's always going to be back on the first serve. He's basically trying not to hit a legitimate or a textbook return a serve. He's wanting to go back and say, I'm going to turn this into a ground stroke. I'm going to let the ball slow. So in general rally play, when a ball, let's say a ball leaves the baseline off a racket at 80 miles an hour, by the time it reaches the other baseline, it's dropped at least half of that speed. So it's less than 40. It's probably around 35. So when Rafa just backs way up, you know, he's essentially just slowing the ball down. He's strong enough that he can rip and find the other baseline, which is, you know, at court 78 feet. He's probably at 138 feet somewhere back in the third row. And then he's quick enough to get up to the baseline and do well. I remember when I was working with Matteo Berrettini against Rafa at the US Open a couple of years ago. And one of the strategies was for Matteo to serve big, first serve, and then hit the first ball as a drop shot. And Rafa, I think he went 6-0, but he did it too much in that first set tiebreak, and that cost him the first set tiebreak. But in general, Rafa's back. It's just fine on a first serve. The second serves where I think the adjustment can be made for him.
Craig, you have coached against Rafa many times, and sometimes you've been successful and sometimes he's gotten the better of you. What do you think? that Spanish guy. What do you think his chances are to win this tournament? Legit, straight up. Good.
Better now that Zverev's out, for sure. You know, everybody has off days. Yeah, way better. I mean, it would skyrocket if Medvedev would dip out of the tournament as well. And then, you know, I work with Matteo, so, you know, we're going to look at that. So he's got Shapovalov next. I was at the match in Rome, sitting third row when Shapo got to match point against him and lost. And, you know, what happened in that match essentially was Shapo was dictating with run around forehands. He was, you know, hitting good backhands. He was being creative. Rafa didn't quite know how to play him until, you know, very deep in that second set and in the third set when Rafa just said, I'm going to stick you in the backhand cage. I'm going to make you hit 11 backhands in a row. And by the time that you get through the fourth and fifth and sixth, there's a really good chance you're going to miss. And if Carlos Moya is doing his work as a coach, they're going to go back to that match and look at it and figure out, how do we get over the line against Shapo in that match? And that's essentially all he's got to do. He's got to put him in the backhand cage and just make him hit 70% backhands for the match, and Rafa wins. If he doesn't and Shapo gets to hit a lot of forehands, Rafa could be in trouble again. There's no doubt about it. Shapo's now being coached by Jamie Delgado, who was with Andy Murray for a long time. So you've got, a breath of fresh air in the coaching box, and I think that's really going to help. So the Shapo match is not a lay down at all. The Berrettini match, if I've got anything to do with it, if Matteo, gets through his next round, and then you've got probably Medvedev in the final. So, but my goodness, Rafa's won 20 of these. He's experienced. He knows what's coming. He knows it's one match at a time. He's got, some runs on the board against all these guys. So he is an absolute legitimate contender. You just can't say he's not.
The backhand thing with Shapovalov is interesting. I thought Zverev didn't do a very good job of getting it to the backhand at all, especially on the second serve return and even mid rally on some of the cross court forehands, giving Shapo too much time to run around. That was on clay. This is on hard court. I'm in two schools of thought, so I want to know what you think. Is it easier to get it to the Shapovalov backhand on hard court because it's quicker, or is it harder because Rafa might have a little bit more trouble changing direction on the forehand down the line and somehow kind of having more trouble directionally?
That's a really good question, and there is no black and white answer for that, because there may be some days on hard that he does it really well, and other days maybe it's not. I mean, the weather and the court conditions changed dramatically here. We got really hot weather the last few days. It's very hot again today. If they play in the middle of the day, the court is much faster. If you play in the cool of the evening, Melbourne heats up and drops a lot of temperature at night, and the court behaves differently. So I would say in general, it's going to be easier for Rafa to find Shapo's backhand on clay. He's just going to have more time to do the things that he wants. Sorry, guys. I had a call come in.
Oh, that's what happens when a call comes in.
Yeah, are you still there?
Yeah.
We're here.
Okay, great, awesome. There we go. All of a sudden, I lost you on my screen. I would imagine that it would have been easier in Rome. I think now it's a little bit more bang, bang, bang. Mm-hmm. I think Shapo can find the run around a little bit better. I think, let me see two games in their match, and I'll know for sure. But that's what I expect will happen. I think Shapo, I think he'll do a little bit better finding forehands and run around forehands here on a lower, quicker surface.
Craig, a topic that we've been discussing when it comes to Rafa relates to this issue of shortening the points. And you hear it on the broadcasts a lot. The commentators will say, Rafa's getting older. He's got to try to shorten the points. And you understand rally length. I mean, you've pioneered that area of tennis, rally length. Is that something that Rafa is, do you think, trying to do, or is it more about he's just running certain patterns which would lead to shorter points?
Yeah, so 2017, when Roger beat him here in the final, I remember them, Rafa was kind of in beast mode, and they were interviewing Carlos Moya, and Carlos just gave it away. He goes, we're looking to play shorter rallies. But the thing was, he played 3 Aussies to start with, and it was Duckworth and a couple of other guys. Maybe Millman was in there. And it just kind of lent itself to playing those shorter rallies anyway. The court's quick, and if they're playing, in the afternoon, the rallies are going to be shorter anyway. I think it's a combination of both. I think it's definitely going to help him for his longevity to play those shorter points. As you probably know, Amy, with the work that I've done, even for Rafa, the player that wins 0-4 is far more likely to succeed than literally any other statistic in our sport. So in order for Rafa to have a focus in 0-4, he's great with the first serve. He's the #1 all-time career leader in second serve points won. He's unbelievable off first serve returns. And he's maybe the best ever at second serve return. So he's naturally really, really good in that 0-4 rally length. When you look at all the players in 0-4, 5-8, and 9+, he leads the tour in the highest, and it's actually in 5 through 8, and it's around 57% points won. So he's exceptional in 0 through 4. He's exceptional in 5 through 8, and the guy's not bad when it gets to long rallies either. So I think it's a combo of both. Yes, he wants to gravitate that way, but he's already very, very good. We just get enamored with the long rallies and him running around the court, you know, in a 22-shot rally. The Rafas stat sheet says, you know, he excels in the short rallies. So, you know, I expect him to continue to do well here in Melbourne in 0 through 4.
Did you say he's the best in the world at 5 through 8? Did I get that right?
Yes, he's if you look at the highest in 0 through 4, the highest in 5 through 8, and the highest in 9 plus. Rafa's the best across the board, and it is in 5 through 8 where he peaks out there around 57% points won.
You think that's because he just is really good at sustaining the aggression and keeping control of the point once he gets it?
It's a pattern I call the 2-1 pattern. So what he does is he'll make the first ball. He'll then, when it comes back, so we've got a serve and a return. Then he goes to the backhand, and the ball comes back, and he goes one more. And then he opens up to the forehand. So he throws a couple of punches to the backhand side to kind of get them to bend over a little bit, which essentially means they hit the ball short. He gets the run around forehand, and he finishes out wide to position A in the juice court. So it's premeditated murder. He's got this pattern of play, which is 2 balls to the backhand and then finish to the forehand, or force the error to the forehand side. And it's a chess match, and he just runs it constantly. And, you know, I'm sitting here watching, you know, Marcus Durant was right there, you know, a couple of steps away from me, just in the minutes as we were getting ready for our call. And he's talking about his match against Rafa. And I sat out there and watched it. And, you know, Marcus just hasn't seen Rafa play 200 matches. And I have. I'm like, well, I know what's going to happen here if you hit the ball there. And Rafa's still running the exact same patterns he's run his entire life. And he's getting better at them. He's just getting more refined. He sees the court so clearly.
I want to ask one more question about the 0 through 4 rallies, because a lot of your work does revolve around that concept of winning those short rallies. And I'm wondering if there are some misconceptions. And I have a feeling that I actually don't know where you're going to go. I'm wondering what the answers can be here. Do you think that there's a perception that winning 0 through 4 rallies is all about aggression, when it's actually also about consistency, also about defense, and it's not necessarily, you know, bang, bang?
It's more about survival is what it's about. So you have 4 different ways a point starts, and they're all vastly different in the outcome and how they're played. So when you're hitting a first serve, you want the point to end immediately with return errors. Yes, you'll sprinkle in some aces, but you're essentially trying to extract as many return errors as possible. You're trying to extract a short ball so that the serve +1 forehand can finish it, and you're trying to get immediately to the net. So the highlight reel of first serves is very short rallies where you're very dominant. Against second serves is, let's not double fault and let's not make a serve +1 error. So it's much more about survival. When we go to first serve returns, it's about putting the ball into the court and surviving. And against second serve returns, it's about punishing the server and forcing a serve +1 error. So 2 of those elements is about offense. There's no question. But the other 2, it's about extending and trying, can you get past 0 through 4 into 5 through 8, where the battlefield becomes much more even. I think early on, and I was here at the 2015 Australian Open where I first uncovered that. IBM threw these stats out but didn't aggregate the data, and I put it all together. I'm like, wow, what does all this mean? And I would say partly that's my fault, because early on when I looked at this data and it was brand new, I probably didn't really understand it well either. You know, the first thing I did understand was 70% of all points in tennis involve a maximum of 2 shots for each player. So it's a lot of short rallies, only 10% were in 9+. And the more you look at it, the more you dig into it, the more you distill it, the more you sleep on it, the more you discuss it with you know, wonderful tennis minds such as yourself and Amy, it becomes clearer over time. So I think now I have a better understanding of it, and it is part aggression, let's get this thing done now, and part survival, can we survive to 5 through 8, where the percentages say I've got a better chance of winning the point.
Craig, one of the main storylines as we transition from Rafa, and this has been amazing already just to hear you going through all of these tactics, is Ash Barty on the women's side. And Amy and I have been talking about how much she reminds us of Roger Federer. Do you see a lot of Federer in Barty? And, you know, it's the more I think about it, I'd say the more I go there. But I want to make the question a little bit, I want to give you more to work with here. If there's things about her that remind you more of Nadal or Djokovic, you can go there as well.
Or anyone else.
Or anyone else, yes.
So I did see Amy put that tweet out. That
Oh, you've been reading my Twitter. You've been reading my Twitter.
Amy, the problem is every time I open about tennis, it just automatically kind of populates.
Oh,
so I'm just naturally reading a lot of your wisdom. So the answer is yes and no. Yes and no here. So the yes is like there's the obvious connection with Roger, with the slice backhand, and setting things up with the slice backhand, an obvious connection. And so I went and dug in, and I wanted to give you guys a little bit of data to work with here and chew on. So let's start with the yes. The game style with the precision serving is very similar with both Ash and Roger, no question there. The other thing is the rally length is very similar. So when Roger won the Aussie Open in 2017, he was at 72% in 0-4. In 2018, he was at 73% in 0-4. Ash Barty so far in the tournament is at 72%. So it's identical. It's absolutely identical. In 5-8, it's 19%, 19 and 21, and in 9+, it's 9-8-8. So you can make an absolute case, and that's not normal for women's tennis. Women's tennis, the men are normally around 68 to 70, and the ladies are in the 64 to 68 range. So Ash is higher than that. Ash is attacking early. So we're going to give credit to the Ash Barty Roger Federer connection with the rally length. Where there's a difference, and it may only be in the tournament so far, but where there's a difference, I went back and looked at Roger in 2017 when he won here. He came to the net 242 times, 28 sets, averaging around 9 times a set. Those are good Roger numbers. 2018, 191 times forward, 22 sets. It's around 9 a set, exactly the same. Ash Barty so far here in Melbourne has only come to the net 20 times in 8 sets, so it's only 2.5 times. 2.5 times a set for Ash Barty, 9 times a set for Roger. So that is not Roger-esque at all. And in fact, I went and looked at the first set against Anisimova, and Ash was not even really trying to get to the net. When she was going to the net, she was either drawn in, typically, or maybe there's a net cord, or maybe both of them end up at the net. But I didn't feel that short ball hunter attitude to jump on everything short. The other connection where you have to go with Roger is serve and volley. 2017, Roger served and volleyed 82 times to win the title here. He served and volleyed 51 times to win the title here in 2018. Ash Barty has not served and volleyed once so far. So those are the two comparisons. And it very well may be Ash would defend that and say, well, the opponents I've played didn't warrant that. I didn't need to come to the net against these opponents. And you know what, Craig, if you had been out at my practice, you would have seen me coming to the net more. So that we don't know. We really need for Ash to complete her tournament here to see, okay, in the first few rounds, maybe it wasn't, but then she turned it on as the tournament went. I worked against her. I helped Alison Risk and her coach defeat Ash Barty at Wimbledon. And, the game plan was real simple, is that, you don't want to go to Ash Barty's backhand because she's going to slice it a lot. She's not going to miss it. You're going to go to the backhand, slice. And the thing is, you are going to get the ball that Ash Barty hits, the quality of that slice. You can't do anything with it. You're not hitting a winner off it. So forget that noise. And Ash is not going to make an error off it. So the game plan is to not go to Ash Barty's backhand at all, because she's either going to hit a slice backhand that you don't get any headway, or she's going to hit a run around forehand where you're in trouble. It's much more about playing Ash through the middle and playing a wide to the forehand. And I saw that against Anisimova, where the racket starts flicking and wrapping like Rafa, but it's around the edge of the racket. So those are kind of my comparisons. It's sometimes Ash Barty does smell like Roger, at other times maybe not so much. But let's see some more matches here.
Yeah, and I got a chance to ask her actually about her slice at Roland Garros in 2019, the year that she ended up winning. And it was interesting. She said she uses it to pin her opponents in certain areas of the court where she wants them. And that really said to me how much confidence that she has in the shot and how much control that she has. And also that she's a pattern runner. She's not out there just trying to gun or whatever. She has exceptionally high tennis IQ. But back on the issue of her volley, she was 6 of 6 today at the net, so she was perfect. I do think there was an element of didn't really need to be there because, I mean, the rallies weren't that long, and Anisimova was missing a lot of returns, so you weren't even getting there. But wouldn't you say, Craig, that she is a very skilled volleyer in terms of technique?
She's an amazing volleyer. Having a good slice backhand from the back of the court really does help develop that volley technique. So yeah, she's one of the best volleyers in the game, no question. She's got good touch. She's got good hands. Her instincts are good. When do I go touch? When do I go angle? When do I play behind? When do I know the lob's coming? She's got all of those elements in spades. So if she needs to go to the net, she's very accomplished up there.
Craig, Matteo Berrettini is now in the quarterfinal, and he's become the only man born in the 1990s to make the quarterfinal at all 4 majors. Novak Djokovic was a barrier at 3 of the last 3 slams in 2021, but generally speaking, he's been just exceptionally consistent at the slams. Everybody knows about the forehand. Everybody knows about the serve. What's underratedly difficult for opponents when they're playing Matteo Berrettini outside of those 2 really super loud and obvious weapons?
What Matteo is doing a better job of is absorbing the game plan. I would say from all the matches that I've worked with the Italians now with Matteo for a number of years, the match against Carlos Alcaraz was as impressive as any as I've seen in sticking to the game plan. And what Matteo is doing well, game plans don't involve a one-way trip, such as I'm going to hit the serve there, and then that's the end of the story. It's much more of a boomerang effect, where if I serve wide, where is the ball going to come back, and what do I want to do with that ball? Is my primary pattern then to approach and go to the back end on the other side? Is it to let my opponent run back and then play behind him? Is it doing the high percentage pattern at love all and doing something different, such as serving bomb down the tee, which has a lot of reward, but maybe it's a little bit riskier? I think Matteo's saving that to a 30 love or a 40-15. He's serving wide and looking for a serve +1 combination, much more at love all or 15 all on a bigger point. He's switching better between primary and secondary, and he's setting things up better. He's not panicking and going, I need to end this point now. I need to end it with 1 shot, because then, the alarm bells go off, because you're trying very low percentage, one-trick pony kind of patterns of play. And Matteo's maturing. He's doing a better job. And against Carlos, he did a really, really good job of that and kept Carlos guessing down the other side of the court. And it was a testament that I know exactly where Matteo is going to hit it, but Carlos doesn't. And Matteo is maturing with his patterns of play. So, it's about, sometimes you can put Matteo in a backhand cage and kind of lock him up there. I think he's doing a much better job of getting out of it. Whether it's, maybe he's going down the line a bit more, maybe he's going down the middle, maybe he's coming through it. There's a variety of different ways to get out of the backhand cage, but he's doing a better job of that. And he's being better at picking the right serve at the right time and then following it up, with a higher percentage shot and covering the forehand a little bit better as well, instead of just like, firing it out of bazooka and we hope this thing lands in the court.
Well, led the tour in break points saved in 2021. So hopes to do that again for sure. And that's a good sign that he is saving those great patterns for when he needs them. That's very interesting to hear. Craig, how can how can our viewers and listeners find your work at Brain Game Tennis?
There's 11 courses on my website, whether it's singles or doubles or the mental, emotional side of the game. There's very specific courses relating to those areas. I also have a blog where I post a lot of content here from the Australian Open. Some very good stuff lately that the Australian Open did, following Alexei Popin and I through the Melbourne tournament and then the first round of the Australian Open, which is some really good behind the scenes stuff. So go to the blog or check out the courses, and that's where you can find my stuff.
And Craig, just on your stuff, because I get asked this all the time, does some of this apply to recreational amateur players like myself? Because people try to tell me that, oh, the pro game is nothing like what you're playing at your club. I mean, it's like a world apart. It's like a different sport. True or not?
What I've done is I've taken the patterns of play and the percentages from the Pro Tour and delivered that to a digestible type of course for players all over the world. You know, I didn't know whether you could take pro patterns and teach young kids, or teach, you know, ladies doubles based on what's happening here at the Australian Open. So I experimented with it, and it absolutely does work. So all the courses are for the recreational players, are for players at all levels and all ages of our game. You know, it looks like it's a different game, and yes, it's a different speed, but where the ball's going is still a very, very similar kind of pattern. So absolutely.
Craig, we wish you luck for the rest of the tournament, and Matteo, we wish you luck for the rest of the year. For Alexei Popyrin, this has been great.
Thank you.
Hopefully we can do it again, and thanks for the time.
Well, I greatly appreciate you having me on, and if Joel is not allowed back on until he can come up with a better background than that.
Yes. Shout out to that.
That's going to be tough.
Good luck, Joel.
Yeah. That'll do it for this episode of 3. Remember, we're available on all podcast platforms. We greatly appreciate it if you leave a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube, like the video, comment, and subscribe. We will see you next time on the next episode of 3.